going in that cabin. That's 3 times hurricane force winds. Those people were dressed for Hawaii in the springtime, not minus 50-degree temperatures. Any period of time at 24,000 feet, and those people will die.
Meters of fuselage from the airplane, exposing passengers to the sky. The cabin is depressurized with no emergency oxygen supply. Unless they rapidly reach a lower altitude where they can breathe again, the passengers will die. Captain Bob Schornsteimer takes over command of the aircraft from First Officer Mimi Tompkins. He begins an emergency descent, dropping 1,200 meters per minute, its speed now increasing to more than 500 kilometers an hour. As the aircraft hurtles down, passengers face a new terror. Wreckage blocks their view of the cockpit, and when the airplane split apart, the nose dropped down by around 1 meter. The plane is held together by just the narrow floor beams.
The floor was buckling up, and you could tell the plane was bending in the middle.
Michelle Honda can't go forward far enough to see whether the pilots are alive or dead. She tries to make contact via the intercom.
Can anyone hear me?
The wires are severed. As she struggles forward to try to reach the cockpit, she gets asked the one question she can't answer.
Do we have a pilot?
I don't know.
Do we have a pilot?
I do not know. Can you fly a plane?
The terror of those on board can only be imagined as she asks the one question no airplane passenger wants to hear.
Can you fly a plane?
First Officer Mimi Tompkins tries to alert air traffic control at Honolulu. Recordings from the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, analyzed later by accident investigators, provide a dramatic record of exactly what took place. The nearest place where they can try to land is the island of Maui. Kahului Airport lies between 2 volcanic mountains. Between them and safety lies a 3,000-meter-high summit. To fly from the location of the explosion to the safety of Kahului Airport, the pilot needs to carefully maneuver, avoiding this high ground. Can the fragile aircraft survive the stresses of turning, or, if they ever reach the airport, of landing? And how can those on board survive? Jane Sato Tomita is barely conscious. Howard Kitaoka clutches her hand. The only faint sign of life is once when Jane squeezes back.
I'm not exactly sure she was conscious, but I did manage to squeeze her hand, and she responded by squeezing my hand, and we just held hands. The simple squeeze of the hand at a time like that is very, very emotional.
Aloha 243. Do you read me?
Mimi Tompkins is not getting through to Honolulu air traffic control, so she switches to the frequency for the tower at Maui's Kahului Airport.
Maui Tower. Aloha 243. Maui Tower. Aloha 243.
Aircraft calling tower. Say again.
Aloha 243. For inbound descent.
At 1:48, 3 minutes after the explosion, the crew make their first voice contact with the ground.
Pressurized. Declaring an emergency.
Aloha 243. Say your position.
Paducah, to the east of Makita Point. Sending out of 11,000. Request clearance into Maui for landing. Request the emergency equipment.
Airport fire station.
We have an Aloha 737 5 minutes out.
Approximately 20 miles. Cleared to runway 02. Decompression problems.
Pilot is declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mauitar. In the station. Attention in the station. We have an in-flight emergency. We have a 737, 5 minutes out, 20 miles. Runway 2. Souls on board, crew on board is unknown. It has decompression problems at this time. Runway 2.
Aloha 243. Okay, the equipment is on the field. It's on the way.
At 3,000 meters, flying west of the mountain, the pilot slows the aircraft and as gently as possible begins the right-hand turn towards Kahului. Passengers sense that someone must be in control of the aircraft.
I've had some training as a pilot, and we were wings level. It wasn't in a dive or a roll. It was wings level. At that moment, I thought, we have a chance.
Meanwhile, those on the ground are unsure about what kind of crisis they're facing. It's a small airport. An airliner in trouble will test the fire crew's experience. For the air controller, it's hard to hear the airplane at all.
Just to verify again, you're breaking up. Your call sign is 243. Is that correct?
Four minutes after the explosion. At this lower altitude, they're able to remove their oxygen masks. With their speed having dropped to a little over 380 kilometers an hour, the wind noise decreases just enough for them to hear one another.
You want me to call for anything else?
No.
Aloha 243. Looks like we've lost a door. We have a hole in the left side of the aircraft.
But the tower can't hear this new information. They've lost contact with the aircraft. Their transmissions aren't being picked up.
Aloha 243. You still up?
Is this a radio malfunction or something worse?
Aloha 243.
Hearing nothing from the stricken aircraft, the controller fears the worst.
Aloha 243.
Aloha 243, still up.
Aloha 243. If you're still here, please ident.
Affirmative.
Aloha 243. Roger. I got your ident straight away. Cleared to land. Wind 040
at 20 knots.
Communication is restored, but the crew's ordeal is far from over.
Cabin, do you hear?
Now Mimi Tompkins tries to contact the cabin by intercom, but there's no response.
Well, the crew doesn't really know what's going on behind them. The airplane is still flying. The captain now has to maintain his focus on flying that airplane, but he doesn't know what real damage exists behind him.
Tell him we'll need assistance to evacuate.
Right. Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Can you hear me on tower frequency?
Aloha 243. I hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
We're going to need assistance. We can't communicate with the flight attendants. We'll need assistance with the passengers when we land.
Okay, you're going to need an ambulance. Is that correct?
Affirmative.
During the descent, passengers experience moments of pure terror.
The plane kept vibrating and shaking, and the luggage racks were falling in, and there was electrical wires flying around zapping, and pretty much pandemonium, but it looked like the plane was ripping in half.
And suddenly, there's a new problem for the flight crew to handle.
Just like manual reversion.
What?
The flight controls feel like manual reversion.
It feels to the pilot as though hydraulic systems, like power steering in an automobile, have now failed. The airframe is under great stress. They need to land as soon as possible.
Can we maintain altitude okay?
The crew fear that critical wiring and control cables may have been severed. Have any of the airplanes